Yasodanandana Prajajanaranjana Yamunatira Panachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Paradari Yasodanandana Prajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kishore Kishori ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Marani ki jai, Gonitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning. It's a major public holiday today. And here we are in a very, you can't say cozy spot because it's a very large place, but here we are in the temple room, at least sitting very close to the Bhagavatam. So it's text 41 through 43 of chapter 85, the 10th canto. So I guess I will chant what I think is text 41, which will be 4 lines. That's dividing the 3 verses up equally. Daitya Danava Gandharva Siddha Vidya Thira Charana Yaksha Raksha Pishachascha Ute Pramata Nayaka Daitya Danava Gandharva Siddha Vidyahara Charana Yaksha Raksha Pishachascha Bhuta Pramata Nayaka Daitya Danava Gandharva Siddha Vidyadra Charana Yaksha Raksha Pishachascha Bhuta Paramata Nayaka. Please chant. Daitya Danava Gandharva Siddha Vidyadra Charana Yaksha Raksha Pichachascha Bhuta Pramata Nayaka Daitya Danava Gandharva Siddha Vidyadra Charana Yaksha Raksha Pishachascha Bhuta Pramata Nayaka Daitya Danava Gandharva Siddha Vidyadhara Charana Yaksha Raksha Pisachascha Bhuta Pramata Narayaka Daitya Danava Gandharva Siddha Vidyadhara Charana Yaksha Raksha Pisachascha Bhuta Paramata Nayaka Daitya Danava Gandharva Siddha Vidyadhara Charana Yaksha Raksha Pisachascha Bhuta Paramatma Nayaka. Thank you very much. I'll read the next two verses because the translation will flow. Visuddha Sattva Damni Adha Tvayi Shastra Sharirini Nityam Nibadha Varaste Vayam Chanye Cha Tadrisha Kesha Nodbadha Vairena Bhaktya Kechana Kamata Natata Sativa Samradha Sani Krishna Suradaya. And word for word, Daitya Danava. The Daitya and Danava demons, Gandharva, and the Gandharvas, celestial singers, Siddha Vidyadhara Charana, the Siddha, Vidyadhara, and Charana demigods. Yaksha, the Yakshas, semi-pious spirits. Raksha, the Rakshasas, man-eating spirits. Pisacha, the carnivorous Pisacha demons. Cha and Bhuta, the ghosts. Paramata Nayaka, and the evil Paramata and Nayaka spirits. I think I covered the first verse. So let's move to the translation. Many who had been constantly absorbed in enmity towards you ultimately became attracted to you, who are the direct embodiment of transcendental goodness and whose divine form comprises the revealed scriptures. These reformed enemies include Daityas, Danavas, Gandharvas, Siddhas, Vidyaharas, Charanas, Yakshas, Rakshasas, Pishachas, Bhutas, Paramatas, and Nayakas, and also ourselves and many others like us. Some of us have become attracted to you because of exceptional hatred, while others have become attracted because of their mood of devotion based on lust. But the demigods and others infatuated by material goodness feel no such attraction for you. And this is the purport. So this is Bali Maharaj speaking, and he's addressing Lord Krishna. So this is the BBT purport. Srila Jiva Goswami explains this passage as follows. The Gandharvas, Siddhas, Vidyaharas, and Charanas are adversaries of the Supreme Lord when they follow the lead of the Daityas and Danava demons. The Yakshas, Rakshasas, Pishachas, and so on tend to be inimical because they are generally covered by ignorance. There are some rascals in the pure mode of goodness, of ignorance, like Shishupal and Pundraka, who are totally absorbed in meditation on the Lord as their enemy, and this fixed consciousness earns them liberation. Others, in a mixed condition of passion and ignorance, associate with the Lord with a desire for position and prestige. Maharaj Bali sees himself as belonging to this category. Yet Lord Vishnu favored Bali by becoming the doorkeeper in the subterranean region of Sutala, just as he had favored the demons by killing and liberating them, and the Gandharvas by engaging them in singing his glories. On the other hand, the Lord awards sense gratification to those demigods who are proud of their being situated in the mode of goodness. Thus, they become deluded and forget him. Om Gyana Simarandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadanti Kam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragutam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitam Shah Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radha Vrindavaneshwari Vishapanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Tarubhyas Cha Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimata Roma Padaswami Iti Namune Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimata Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namune Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yeah, it's interesting reading this verse on a day that's, I guess, a major religious holiday in this country. Because it's dealing with all these demoniac spirits. So this particular little section where Bali Maharaj is talking is put in a very simple way by Srila Prabhupada in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I'm going to read his particular writing on this section. So this particular statement of Bali Maharaj is taking place at the residence of Bali Maharaj, which is Sutala. And he's busy addressing Lord Krishna. So here's Srila Prabhupada writing. So this is Bali Maharaj speaking. My dear Lord, we belong to the Daityas or demon category. The demons or demoniac persons, the Gandharvas, the Siddhas, the Vidyaharas, the Charanas, the Yakshas, the Rakshasas, the ghosts, and the hobgoblins are by nature incapable of worshipping you or becoming your devotees. Instead of becoming your devotees, they are simply impediments on the path of devotion. But you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, representing the Vedas, and are situated in the mode of uncontaminated goodness. Your position is always transcendental. For this reason, some of us, although born in the modes of passion and ignorance, have taken shelter of your lotus feet and have become devotees. Some of us are actually pure devotees, and some of us have taken shelter of your lotus feet because we desire to gain something from devotion. So that was Bali Maharaj's speaking to Lord Krishna at this juncture, as Srila Prabhupada put the words of Bali Maharaj. So it's a particular analysis that Bali Maharaj is doing of the demon category as being incapable of worshipping Lord Krishna. And this can be understood if one considers the picture of the demoniac mentality. And so you get a picture of a mentality that is actually preventing or making these persons or this category of persons incapable of worshipping Lord Krishna. So this is how Lord Krishna describes the mentality. This is how the demoniac category of persons are thinking. These are Krishna's words. So much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will be increased in the future, more and more. He is my enemy, and I have killed him, and my other enemies will also be killed. I'm the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I am the richest man, surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There is none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices. I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. So this is Krishna giving the mentality of the demoniac persons. So in this way, Krishna says, such persons are deluded by ignorance. So that's from Bhagavad Gita 16:15. So why this kind of mentality reflects a nature that's in ignorance, because that's what Bali Maharaj is stating. And Krishna is stating too, that they're deluded by ignorance. So why this mentality reflects that kind of ignorance is that being so self-complacent, perfectly comfortable, perfectly complacent, perfectly satisfied with themselves, they are always impudent. So being so self-complacent makes them impudent. I mean, so atrociously rude. They're deluded by wealth and false prestige. You know, thinking yourself is so important. It can't be accurate. And sometimes performing sacrifices. It's in name only that those sacrifices are performed. And this is in Bhagavad Gita 16:17. Although they are certainly ostentatious, so they may have this vast wealth, which makes them very ostentatious, they do not follow any rules and regulations. So that's Bhagavad Gita 16:17. In addition, Krishna explains, this is Krishna explaining, demoniac people are completely bewildered by their false ego. Their strength, pride, lust, and anger. Being envious of me, the Lord, who is situated in their bodies and the bodies of all living entities, they find fault with me and blaspheme real religion. So Krishna breaks it down very graphically, that despite, you know, this external show of ostentatiousness and the supposed, you know, self-satisfaction, the fact that they're so caught up in their false ego, this picture they have of themselves, they actually are completely bewildered, is the phrase that Krishna uses. So there's actually confusion, internal confusion, bewilderment. And it's accompanied by an actual envious mood towards Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Krishna puts it there, blaspheming real religion. So it's quite extreme, the external expression of their hatred of Lord Krishna. So that was from Bhagavad Gita, the 18th chapter, the 18th verse. So the accumulation of wealth and strength and prestige, so to speak, because it appears prestigious, the position of somebody who's very wealthy and with this kind of mentality, has the demoniac person been against God's supremacy? And they do not like to believe in the scriptures. So that's a factual internal state of persons in the demoniac category. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in commenting on this statement of Bali Maharaj, he has him in a kind of dialogue with Lord Krishna. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he likes to actually look at the internal emotions and thinking of the person. So this is how he puts Bali Maharaj speaking to Lord Krishna. Ah, how amazing it is. Even though we have the nature of rajas and tamas, passion and ignorance, and we have become more fortunate than the demigods in sattva guna, in pure goodness. This is expressed in 3 verses, so that's for the 3 verses we read today. So this is what Bali Maharaj is thinking. He belongs to this demoniac category of persons. So he sees it that his nature is being controlled by ignorance and passion. But actually, isn't it amazing, he's telling Lord Krishna, that even though he's got this kind of nature, he's become more fortunate even than the demigods who are in pure goodness or in goodness. So this is the particular position of the demigods, because he's seen himself, like, look at, you know, the picture I've just painted of the demoniac mentality and the actual internal state of the demoniac person. And here's Bali Maharaj understanding that actually he thinks he's more fortunate than somebody who's in controlled by nature that's in goodness. So if we look at the particular position of the demigods, who are supposed to be in goodness, they have a nature that's in goodness, as opposed to this whole picture I've painted of the demoniac persons and their particular nature. So the particular position of the demigods is such that Lord Krishna's potency or his strength and power is actually behind the demigods. So imagine what a different category of personalities this is. So this is understood from Lord Krishna explaining. So this is how Lord Krishna explains it. I am the super soul dwelling within the heart of all living entities. According to one's desire to worship a particular demigod, I make his faith steady so that he can worship that deity with faith. So that's Bhagavad Gita 7:21. So demigods have the capacity to bestow benedictions, and living entities can worship the demigods to get these benedictions. And Krishna is actually even steadying the faith from within the heart of the person so that they can worship the demigods, they can get these benedictions. But for the demigods to be able to give the benedictions, for the living entity to have that desire to worship the demigods, it's actually still subject to the will of Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna has to will that. He has to allow that. And so as the super soul living in the heart of every living entity, he's the one who's actually going to facilitate that. He's actually going to help the individual to get the faith in the demigod. He's going to actually allow the demigod to bestow the benediction on that person who's appealing to the demigod for benediction. So that's explained by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 7:21. So in addition, their way of being is in goodness. So this is the demigods. It means that the demigods give rise to a mentality. We heard what the demoniac mentality is. So by way of comparison, the demigods give rise to a mentality that is looking with the eye of knowledge. So their mentality is coming from a knowledgeable place. That knowledge is such that, and this is Bhagavad Gita 18:20, this is how they're looking at everything. We heard what the demoniac mentality is. So here's the demigod mentality. One undivided spiritual nature is seen in all living entities, although they are divided into innumerable forms. So this is how the demigods are looking. They're understanding that there's a spiritual nature in all these different forms. They understand there's a spiritual nature. So that's how the demigods are viewing everyone. So to see that one superior nature, the living force in everybody, is to see with a way of being that's in goodness. To be able to see like that, you have to actually have a nature that's in goodness. So of course, this is a reality because of the fact that the spirit soul transmigrates through various species in order to enjoy the fruits of his karma. And it's a reality that there's a spiritual nature because although the soul resides within the perishable body, he's imperishable. So these are two facts that actually are there. So the demigod's way of seeing is completely accurate. It's based on a factual reality. So as opposed, of course, to the demoniac mentality, which is all this picture they have of themselves. It's not connected to reality. And in fact, they shun the presence of the Lord. And even statements, Srila Prabhupada makes the statement that they inflict violence on their own bodies and on the bodies of others because they're oblivious to the presence of the soul, the spiritual nature. So you can see the demigod mentality is way superior to that of the demons. Bali Maharaj, he continues, and this is Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So he's addressing Krishna, and this is Srila Vishwanath giving Bali Maharaj's words. The demigods endowed with goodness, sattva, samradha, those were the words, have not attained such attraction to you, who are the eternal embodiment of transcendental knowledge and bliss. That's Visuddha Sattva Dhamni, and whose body comprises the revealed scriptures about devotion, Shastra Sharanini. So Srila Vishwanath gives Lord Krishna's response. So you see how Bali Maharaj, what he's concluding, that even the demigods, though they're understanding the spiritual nature, still they actually have not come to this point of being attracted to Lord Krishna. And how he's seeing Krishna is that Krishna is the embodiment of transcendental knowledge. So Krishna within himself, he has all that knowledge about the spirit, soul, and the relationship with him and the culture of devotion. But the demigods haven't come to this point. This is Bali Maharaj talking. And he's even seeing Lord Krishna as within his body he encompasses all the revealed scriptures. So, and then, so that's Bali Maharaj's conclusion when he looks at the different mentalities. And Srila Vishwanath gives Krishna's response. So this is how Krishna responds to Bali Maharaj's analysis. He says, but Bali, you are one of my greatest devotees. So that's how Krishna responds. So that's the internal loving exchange that's happening. And this is how Bali Maharaj responds to Krishna. No, we are not, and our sons, such as Bana, who are well known as descendants of Hiranyakashipu, are on the side of the Daityas, your eternal sworn enemies. There are other extremely envious persons, such as the Danavas and the Rakshasas, and the Gandharvas, who are your devotees, filled with material desires, Sakama Bhaktas. So Bali, he's responding that no, he's not the greatest devotee of Lord Krishna. He's in fact in the demoniac category. He's on the side of the demons. And he says it's well known, even, they're descendants of Hiranyakashipu. So, super great demon. So Bali Maharaj was actually a great devotee of Lord Krishna. For he actually made his position clear when the Lord came as a Brahmana, as Vamanadev, to Bali Maharaj to ask for some charity. And the charity that Vamanadev was asking was 3 steps of land. And Bali Maharaj, he makes his position clear. This is what he says. And this is in the presence of his spiritual master, Sukracharya, who is advising him, no, this is a fake Brahmana. Don't give him any charity. You're going to be completely bereft of everything. But Bali Maharaj is an extremely learned person. This is how he puts his position at that time. Although he is Vishnu himself, referring to Vamanadev, out of fear, he has covered himself in the form of a Brahmana to come to me begging. Under the circumstances, because he has assumed the form of a Brahmana, even if he irreligiously arrests me or even kills me, I shall not retaliate, although he is my enemy. So he makes his position clear. He's not going to deviate from religious principles. If Lord Vamanadev is Lord Vishnu, even if he himself is going to be killed, even if he's going to be treated like an enemy, he's still going to actually give to Lord Vamanadev what Lord Vamanadev is asking, because Lord Vamanadev is coming to him as a Brahmana. So he's obeying religious principles, he's following rules and regulations, and that was one of the problems of a demoniac mentality. There's no following of rules and regulations. And any sacrifice that's done is just an external show. There's no real depth because they're actually opposed to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But you notice Bali Maharaj, he makes his position clear. He is going to actually follow religious principles. He's going to give to Vamanadev the charity that he's requesting. So that was from the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in the 20th chapter. So there's mention that at that time, the residents of the higher planetary systems, namely the demigods, the Gandharvas, the Vidyaharas, the Siddhas, and the Charanas, they were all very pleased with the position that Bali Maharaj took. So by Bali Maharaj's simple, non-duplicitous action, it pleased them so much that they praised and showered upon him millions of flowers. That's how it's explained. So that was the situation at that time. So you see, Bali Maharaj's actual position, you can understand what it actually is. So Bali Maharaj possessed the quality of simplicity and freedom from duplicity. So he didn't actually express something but do the contrary, or do something in a dishonest kind of way. So having this kind of simplicity and freedom from duplicity, good morning, is the qualification of a Brahmana and of a Vaishnava. So both have this particular quality. There's no duplicity. It's just been very simple and straightforward. So when Bali Maharaj acted with this kind of unflinching faith and devotion to the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu, this was very much appreciated by the residents of the high planetary systems. And notice when he's in the verses that we read, he's actually referring to the Gandharvas. And he refers to them as having material desires, but that Lord Krishna is very kind to them. He's given them a service that they can always sing at the right time to actually praise him. So indeed, they did perform that service at the time when he performed his action to Lord Vamanadev. So, and showered them millions of flowers. So Srila Vishwanath continues Bali Maharaj's dialogue with Lord Krishna. So this is Bali Maharaj continuing. By your mercy, you always give us your darshan by remaining as our doorkeeper in Sutala Loka. To others, you grant your darshan by killing and liberating them. And to the Gandharvas, you've given your darshan by allowing them to sing your glories in order to please you and your devotees. So that's Bali Maharaj's particular understanding of how Lord Krishna actually reveals himself and gives his darshan to different categories of persons. To some, he's actually giving his darshan by killing and liberating them. And to the Gandharvas, he's allowing them to sing, and so on. So to the lusty demigods, however, you give sense gratification, which makes them forget you, and thus they fail to become indebted to you. So this is how Bali Maharaj expresses himself to Lord Krishna. There's indeed mention of the Gandharvas together with the Kimbu Purushas and the Kinnaras, sounding thousands and thousands of kettle drums and trumpets again and again, and they're singing in jubilation, declaring. So this is at that time of Bali Maharaj's actions towards Vamanadev. This is what these categories of persons were saying, the Kimpurushas and the Kinnaras, together with the Gandharvas. How exalted a person is Bali Maharaj, and what a difficult task he has performed. Even though he knew that Lord Vishnu was on the side of his enemies, he nonetheless gave the Lord the entire 3 worlds in charity. So they were fully appreciative Bali Maharaj. So the description is as follows. The unlimited Supreme Personality of Godhead, who had assumed the form of Vamanadev, then began increasing in size, acting in terms of the material energy, and everything in the universe was within his body, including the earth, the planetary systems, the sky, the directions, the various holes in the universe, the seas, the oceans, the birds, beasts, human beings, the demigods, and the great saintly persons. So this is what they were seeing. So Bali Maharaj wanted to give the Lord charity, but Vamanadev expanded himself in such a way that he showed Bali Maharaj that everything in the universe is already in his body. So this is the reciprocation on the part of Vamanadev. Bali Maharaj is wanting to give charity, so Vamanadev reveals to Bali Maharaj that actually he possesses everything in the universe. It's already in his body. So that was the reciprocation on the part of Lord Vamanadev. So the Lord gives his darshan by killing and liberating, as mentioned by and Srila Jiva Goswami. So this was something mentioned by Bali Maharaj. That's how he sometimes gives darshan, because in the case of Bali Maharaj, he gave his darshan in the form of Lord Vamanadev, who expanded and revealed that he contained the entire universe in his body. And Srila Jiva Goswami, he goes into detail about one of these persons, or he names one of the persons that Krishna gives his darshan to by actually killing and liberating. So that's Paundraka. So Paundraka is somebody who has a nature of ignorance or tamas. And King Paundraka, this is something of his action in his exchanges with the Lord Krishna. He sent a messenger, and this is what the messenger had to deliver, the message he had to deliver to Krishna. So this is Paundraka's message to Krishna. It is I who have descended to show mercy to all living beings. Therefore, give up your false nature. That is the message he sends to Lord Krishna. So he was somebody absorbed in thinking of the Lord with hatred. And that kind of action, which is in ignorance, is defined by Lord Krishna. This is how Krishna defines such action. Action performed in illusion, in disregard of scriptural injunctions, and without concern for future bondage or for violence or distress caused to others, is said to be in the mode of ignorance. So notice, it's such a precise definition of an action that's performed in ignorance. There's some illusion involved. There's disregard of scriptural injunction, and it's without concern for the future consequences that will come in the form of karma to a particular entity performing such an action. And it's oblivious to the violence that's being caused to others or the distress being caused to others. That's an action in the mode of ignorance. So that's Bhagavad Gita 18:25. So we come full circle, because we started out with Bali Maharaj describing the demoniac mentality. So here we are looking at a particular example of somebody with a mode of ignorance kind of nature, a being that's in ignorance. So the explanation given of why irresponsible work is destructive is because it destroys the regulative principles of scriptural injunctions. So it's often based on violence, and it's distressing to other living entities. So that's the particular explanation of when persons perform work that's irresponsible. Such irresponsible work is carried out in the light of one's personal experience. So that kind of work, it never refers to scriptural injunction. It's just something that one has personally had some experience of, and you're executing without thinking of the consequences, without thinking of the distress you're going to cause to other living beings. So that's called delusion. So All such work is the product of the mode of ignorance. So that's how Srila Prabhupada puts it. So that was our coming full circle with these 3 verses. If there's anything to expand the discussion, please feel free. Oh, thank you very much for applying it on a personal level, thinking of the category of humans, because indeed that's the particular dilemma of being in a human body, that actually one is subject to all 3 modes. So goodness, ignorance, and passion. And so there's the problem of being subject to the false ego, as persons in the demoniac category are completely at the mercy of, and also the other end of the spectrum that you pointed out of being subject to a way of being that's in goodness, where there may be such happiness that in both cases there's that inability to stay attracted to Lord Krishna. So I guess because it wasn't the highlight in this particular section, the I guess the amelioration for the difficulty for a human being being subject to, I guess, the different ways of being and a combination of them in one body is that constant cultivation on the devotional plane. So, cultivating that consciousness of performing actions for the pleasure of Lord Krishna, which is pushing aside the false ego, and it's also putting aside that happiness that comes from being in the mode of goodness, which is also to some degree connected to being more in the ego plane of living, because one is still thinking of one's own happiness. So maybe not as overtly as the demoniac mentality, but there's a sense of comfort from being in that, I guess, goodness way of being. So it's a completely, you could say, dependent kind of situation for somebody in a human body. One is really reliant on the kindness and mercy of Lord Krishna to keep one protected. But one's consciousness has to always move in the direction of Lord Krishna, so one cultivates that. So you're not hearing so much about the demigods cultivating that consciousness. And in the case of those with demoniac mentality, there's not even any interest. In fact, it deliberately goes in the opposite direction. So, but thank you for bringing it back to those in the human body. Thank you very much for making that contribution in line with how it is that one is doing that cultivation and staying away even from that kind of goodness thing of enjoyment. Because there's a certain happiness about being in the mode of goodness where you actually are doing your duty and executing everything as you're supposed to do it, but actually pointing out what Chandramauli Swami had said, that the emphasis always has to be for oneself. Oh, this is to serve. I'm doing this to serve. So that's where the happiness actually lies. So indeed, it's a constant cultivation. You move the consciousness into a conscious position of why it is you're performing your actions. So thank you very much for that contribution. That is an interesting way to get the microphone. Go ahead. And thank you for the understanding you got. And particularly that understanding was that receiving something should be channeled outward as a kind of giving to others, whatever you've received. Uh, and it struck you that Bali Maharaj was functioning in that kind of way. Yeah, in his case, he was being praised by the heavenly denizens because they saw that he'd actually performed a very difficult task, because he actually had control of the three worlds, and he actually was willing to give everything he had to Vamanadev. So actually, the very beings that do have the material desires were actually viewing it as what an incredibly difficult thing he did. So because there's an understanding, if one has that little bit of attachment to one's material things, or as you put it, what one's been given, then actually it's quite a difficult thing to be able to pass it on. But in the case of Vamanadev, his request was, he presented himself as a Brahmana. So Bali Maharaj, because he's following scriptural injunctions that you give to a Brahmana asking in charity. So he's performing his duty, and nothing would stop him from performing that duty. So it makes it easier, that passing on to others what one has, if one's following scriptural injunctions. So it's a very simple scriptural injunction. The ruler has to give to the Brahmana who's coming to beg in charity. So just by performing that dutiful thing, it made it easy for him to perform the sacrifice he performed. So for ourselves, that what facilitates that being able to pass on something, that kind of generosity of spirit, is also always going back to scriptural injunctions. And so the scriptural injunction certainly is that one is doesn't remain attached to something, seen it as belonging to oneself, but understands who it actually belongs to. And that was a lesson that Bali Maharaj even got from Vamanadev, because Vamanadev revealed that all the universes, the seas, the beasts, the animals, everything was already within his body. He already possessed everything. So that's what can assist one also in one's own giving, is remembering who's actually the proprietor of everything. So just a thought, but thank you. So thank you very much for your very kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.